I returned from Denver expecting the familiar comfort of my home, my sanctuary, the place where I had built decades of memories with my brother, Mark. Instead, I found my suitcases stacked neatly on the curb, drenched by the early spring rain, and a note pinned to the largest one. "If you want to stay, the garage is all we have. Love, your sister-in-law." My heart dropped. My fingers trembled as I fumbled for my phone, calling the bank, needing proof that I had been paying the mortgage faithfully for the past 2 years. I needed to hear it confirmed out loud, because what I was seeing didn't make any sense. Yes, the payments were there, exactly as scheduled. Automatic, on time. My own money keeping a roof over my head, while Mark and his wife, Sophia, had apparently decided I no longer belonged inside it. I stared at the soggy luggage, the note fluttering slightly in the wind, and felt a surge of betrayal so sharp it stole my breath. I had poured my life into that house. Every corner bore a story: birthday parties, quiet Sunday mornings, family dinners, late-night talks over coffee. And now they had reduced me to a visitor in my own home. I could see the garage clearly from where I stood, the metal door slightly ajar. A single mattress leaned against the wall, a tiny nightstand with a lamp perched beside it. My clothes were bundled in boxes, labeled in Sophia's neat handwriting, a small insult wrapped in organization. My photos, my books, my life, it was all condensed into that cramped, cold space, as if my very presence was inconvenient. I sank to the ground beside my suitcases, rain soaking through my coat, and tried to steady my shaking hands. My phone buzzed. A text from Mark. "Elena, we need the space. Sophia needs a home office. The garage has everything you need for now. Don't make this difficult. Don't make this difficult." As if I were the one creating the problem. I whispered to myself, the words tasting bitter. The house. My house. After everything I've done. Nights I stayed awake with him when he was sick. Weekends I sacrificed for him so they could have time for themselves. The countless hours, the money, the love. I had been invisible, dismissed as a burden. I didn't reply. Instead, I called Martha, my oldest friend, my anchor through life's storms. "Martha, I don't know where to go," I stammered. The words lodged in my throat. The garage. They put me in the garage. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, she said calmly, but I could hear the steel under her voice. She didn't question me, didn't demand explanations. She understood. She always understood. I closed my eyes, letting the rain pour over me, feeling the cold concrete beneath my feet through the thin soles of my shoes. I had to make a decision. This house, my home, the heart of my life, was no longer just walls and furniture. It was a battleground for respect, for my dignity, for my place in the family I had helped raise. The thought hardened inside me. They thought I would stay silent, continue paying, continue shrinking into nothing. But I wasn't going to disappear. I am Elena Harper, and I had not yet been seen for who I truly am. Martha's car pulled up, and I felt a flicker of hope, a spark amidst the storm. She handed me a warm coffee as I stepped inside, away from the pouring rain and the garage that had become my temporary cage. "Where are you reading this from?" I asked quietly, more to myself than to anyone else. "Is someone in New York, Berlin, London, or a small town tucked away in the mountains? I want you to feel this, the shock, the betrayal, the awakening, because this isn't just my story. It's about seeing your own worth, even when those who should cherish you try to erase you." As I sipped the coffee, warmth spreading through my fingers, I realized the first step had been taken. The world outside was stormy, relentless, just like the people I thought I could trust. But inside, I could feel the stirrings of determination, the pulse of something fierce and unstoppable. I would not be invisible any longer. I would reclaim not just my house, but my life. And this was only the beginning. I remember the nights vividly, sitting by Mark's bed when he had fevers that burned through the night, rocking him back to sleep while my own eyelids grew heavy. I remember the countless shifts I picked up at the diner, the extra hours at the bookstore, all so that his college tuition could be covered without burdening our parents. Every sacrifice I made, every penny I spent, every sleepless night, it was all for them, for Mark and for Sophia, who had come into his life like a whirlwind and claimed her space without ever pausing to see mine. And yet, over time, my contributions seemed to vanish into thin air. Suggestions I offered for decorating the living room, for organizing the kitchen. They were brushed aside with polite nods that carried the weight of dismissal. My favorite chair, the one I sank into every evening after work, was moved to the corner, out of the main room, without a word. My books, my photos, even small personal touches I had added to the house, disappeared or were repositioned with a precision that screamed intent. Slowly, almost imperceptibly at first, I became the background noise in my own life. One evening, I walked into the living room to find Sophia rearranging the furniture. She smiled at me, a smile so tight it didn't reach her eyes, as she lifted my armchair and placed it in the corner near the staircase. "It just makes more sense here," she said lightly. But it wasn't about sense. It never had been. This was about control. My memories, my place, my comfort. It was all being reshaped without my consent. I caught myself holding back a sharp retort, my jaw tightening. The injustice of it pressed against my ribs, making it hard to breathe. I knew if I reacted in anger, I might lose the little leverage I still had. So I stayed quiet, swallowed the lump in my throat, and watched them continue. I watched Sophia move my framed photographs, pictures of Mark as a boy, of family holidays, moments frozen in time, and replace them with prints she had chosen. My life, edited without permission. It wasn't just the physical spaces. Invitations to my friends were frowned upon. Gardening in the backyard? Too much noise. Baking in the kitchen? Disruptive. Every act of mine that had once been part of the rhythm of this home was now scrutinized, restricted, judged. And the worst part was the realization that I had allowed it to happen. I had tried to be helpful, accommodating, not wanting to stir conflict, believing that love meant making myself smaller. But love had been weaponized against me. That night, I packed a small bag and called Harper Fields. She didn't hesitate. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, she said, sensing the desperation in my voice. I hadn't even finished explaining before she reassured me. There was no judgment, no questions, just understanding. That in itself felt like a lifeline. The drive to her apartment was a blur of headlights through rain-streaked streets. My mind replayed every slight, every small act of disregard, every subtle reminder that I was no longer welcome in the life I had built alongside my brother. When Harper opened the door, she enveloped me in a hug so firm, so grounding, that for a moment I allowed myself to tremble freely, the weight of months of invisibility pressing out through my shoulders. "I'm here," she whispered. "You don't have to explain." And for the first time in weeks, maybe months, I felt a flicker of clarity. I realized that the way I had been treated wasn't just unfortunate. It was deliberate, a strategy of erasure, of turning me into someone who existed only to facilitate their comfort. I had been patient, accommodating, loving without boundary. And now I understood that patience had been mistaken for weakness. Sitting on her worn couch, the hum of the heater filling the silence between us, I allowed myself to imagine something different. I could fight this. I could reclaim not only my home, but my dignity, my voice, my space in the family. The anger was there, yes, but underneath it was something sharper, more precise, a determination to assert that my life, my sacrifices, and my memories were not disposable. I didn't have all the answers yet. I didn't know what the next step would be, or how Mark and Sophia would react if I spoke up. But for the first time in a long time, I felt the stirrings of agency, a sense that I was no longer entirely at their mercy. And that was a dangerous, thrilling, liberating feeling all at once. I couldn't stop replaying everything Harper had said in my head, the quiet observations, the sharp truths I had been avoiding. She didn't mince words. I had allowed myself to be used. Every favor, every sacrifice, every sleepless night had been taken for granted. And now, finally, the fog lifted. I realized I had been living my life on their terms, shrinking, accommodating, fading. That ends now. The next morning, I called Luke Warren, a lawyer Harper had recommended, someone who specialized in personal property and family asset disputes. I felt my pulse spike when I heard his calm, professional voice on the other end. "Ms. Harper," he said, "tell me exactly what's been happening, and don't leave anything out." I took a deep breath, letting the words spill out. The suitcases on the curb, the note from Sophia, the garage, the rearranged furniture, the hidden photographs, the subtle but persistent erasure of my presence. I spoke about the mortgage payments I had continued making for 2 full years, the sacrifices, the years of giving. Luke listened silently, occasionally jotting notes, occasionally letting a low, "I see," punctuate my sentences. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. "Based on what you've told me," he said slowly, "there's a concept called equitable interest. By continuing to make payments on a property you no longer legally own, you may have established a legal claim. They cannot sell or transfer the house without addressing your contribution. You have leverage." The words hit me like ice water. Leverage. For the first time in months, maybe years, I felt a pulse of control, a tangible sense of power. My voice, the one that had been silent, invisible, weighed down by guilt and habit, was waking up. "So, I can stop them from just taking it?" I asked, my hands clenching. "You can," Luke confirmed. "We need to document everything, every payment, every correspondence, and we prepare to confront them strategically. They won't expect you to assert this power." I sat back, my mind spinning. The house, the home where I had poured my love and labor, the place where I had laughed with Mark, watched him grow, endured the hard winters, and celebrated victories, could not just vanish under their control. I had been giving, and now I could finally claim what was mine. I could almost hear Sophia's sharp laughter, the way she dismissed my suggestions as trivial, the subtle superiority in Mark's voice when he spoke over me. I could feel my heartbeat, fast and sure, a drumbeat of defiance rising in my chest. It wasn't just about the house, it was about respect, recognition, and reclaiming my place in my own life. "I need to see the full ledger of payments," Luke continued, his voice firm but encouraging. "We'll use it to establish your equitable interest. Then we draft a letter, formal, unambiguous, to your brother and Sophia. We make them understand that they cannot ignore you or the contributions you've made." I nodded, feeling the first surge of determination. My anger wasn't reckless. It was sharp, calculated. This was my chance to stop being invisible, to turn the tables without losing myself in the process. I could see it clearly. I would walk into that house not as a passive guest or a forgotten sibling, but as a woman claiming her rightful place. After hanging up with Luke, I stared out the window. The sun had broken through the clouds, glinting off the rain-soaked street. My suitcases still sat there, a silent accusation, but now they were reminders of how far I had let things go and how much power I still had. I turned to Harper, who had been quietly watching, a knowing look on her face. "This is it," I said. "I'm done being invisible. It's time they remember who I am. And if they don't respect that..." I didn't finish the sentence, but she understood. That night, for the first time, I felt awake. The fear was still there, of course, but beneath it, an unshakable certainty. I was ready to act. I was ready to stand my ground, to claim what I had earned, and to make sure Mark and Sophia understood that the woman they tried to sideline was no longer powerless. The first morning at Cafe Willow felt like stepping into a different world. The scent of freshly brewed coffee and warm pastries hit me like a wave, grounding me in reality in a way that hadn't happened in months. My hands, used to handling spreadsheets and mortgages, now carefully balanced trays and cups, pouring lattes with precision. Every tip I earned, every smile I exchanged with a customer, felt like a small victory, a reminder that I was seen, I mattered, and my effort counted. I felt my chest expand in a way I hadn't in weeks. Each order taken, each table attended, was a deliberate act of reclaiming my space in the world. I was no longer the invisible sibling, the sidelined sister in a house I had helped maintain. Here, my work was tangible, immediate, and rewarding. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I was making money that was entirely mine. "Morning, Elena. Ready for the lunch rush?" Rosie, the cafe manager, called from behind the counter. Her voice was cheerful but firm. I nodded, tying my apron tightly, feeling the weight of responsibility, but also a thrill of autonomy. I soon realized that being here, immersed in the rhythm of coffee machines and clinking cups, was restoring something fundamental, my sense of self. Every day, I felt a little more confident stepping out of the shadows I'd been forced into. I could hear my own voice again, in the jokes I exchanged with coworkers, in the polite but firm interactions with customers, in the small decisions I made independently. During a lull in the morning rush, I leaned against the counter, wiping the steam from the espresso machine, and allowed myself to think. 2 years of paying the mortgage, countless nights giving up my own rest and comfort, had left me exhausted and almost numb. But now, with every shift I worked, every dollar earned, every small gesture of competence and kindness acknowledged, I was waking up to the reality that I could take control, that my life didn't have to be dictated by Mark and Sophia's whims. A customer approached, a middle-aged man with a briefcase, clearly in a rush. "Large black coffee, please, and a blueberry scone," he said briskly. I smiled, handled the order with care, and when he walked away, he nodded in appreciation. That nod, so ordinary yet so validating, struck me profoundly. I realized I hadn't needed their approval to feel worthy all this time. During my break, Harper called. "How's your first week?" she asked. Her voice carried warmth, encouragement, the kind that made me feel like someone was rooting for me outside my family's suffocating expectations. I laughed softly, the sound lighter than I expected. "It's freeing, exhausting, but freeing. I haven't felt this alive in months." "You're rebuilding," she said simply. "Not just the house, not just your rights, your life." I let that settle in. It was true. With every shift, I was reconstructing the foundation of who I was, brick by brick. I was learning that independence wasn't just about money or space. It was about choice, about reclaiming my agency and setting boundaries that would protect me from being sidelined again. By the end of the week, I felt an unfamiliar but invigorating mix of fatigue and exhilaration. My body ached, yes, but my mind was alert, my heart engaged, and my spirit stirred. I could see clearly now. This wasn't just a temporary refuge. This was preparation, training for the confrontation I would eventually have with Mark and Sophia. Not as a timid, compliant sister, but as someone who understood her worth, her contributions, and her right to be respected. That night, as I walked home from the cafe, the city lights reflecting off wet streets, I realized how much I had been asleep to my own needs. And now, awake, aware, and capable, I could finally claim not just my home, but my life. Every latte poured, every customer greeted, every tip earned was a step closer to reclaiming my power. I was no longer invisible. I was Elena Harper, and I was standing tall again. The moment I stepped into Luke Warren's office, my pulse was hammering in my ears. Mark sat across from me, arms crossed, a tight line of frustration etched across his face. Sophia perched beside him, her perfect posture and carefully rehearsed smile failing to hide the impatience in her eyes. I could feel the weight of months of betrayal pressing down on me, but I also felt something stronger now: clarity, determination, and control. "I'm going to be very clear," I said, my voice calm but unwavering. "If you intend to sell the house, you will reimburse me for every mortgage payment I have made since it was transferred into your names. And the ownership must legally revert to me before any sale proceeds. This is non-negotiable." Mark opened his mouth, but no words came out. Sophia leaned forward, her smile sharp. "Elena, this is ridiculous. The house is legally ours. You have no claim." "I know exactly what I'm claiming," I interrupted. "And it's not just about legality. It's about respect. It's about fairness. I have poured 2 years of my money, my time, and my energy into this home, and I will not be dismissed or erased. Our family relationship does not trump integrity or basic decency." A tense silence fell. Mark's jaw tightened, his hands fidgeting with the edge of the desk. I met his gaze steadily, refusing to look away. I could see the shift in Sophia's expression too, the flicker of uncertainty as she realized I was no longer the quiet, accommodating sister. I don't understand," Mark said finally, his voice tight. "You've been..." "Enough," I said firmly. "I've been silent for too long. I've been invisible. That ends today." Luke leaned back, watching intently, giving me a subtle nod of reassurance. I felt the power in that room, the leverage that my months of careful payments and documentation had created. I wasn't just demanding respect, I had earned it. After what felt like hours in the silence that followed, Sophia exhaled sharply. "Fine, you want it this way, we'll comply. But you need to understand this changes things." "I understand," I replied, my tone steady. "And I accept that the relationship between us will need to be rebuilt from a place of honesty and boundaries. That is part of the process." Finally, the agreements were signed. I felt a wave of relief and triumph wash over me. Not because I had beaten them, but because I had reclaimed myself. I had drawn a line, established boundaries, and ensured that my contributions and sacrifices were recognized. Returning home, the first thing I did was walk through the familiar rooms, now truly mine again. I restored the spaces, returning cherished photos to their places, arranging furniture the way I preferred, planting tulips and daisies in the front garden where Mark and I had once planted together. Each step, each action felt like a declaration of self-respect and ownership. That evening, I sat on the porch, the sky fading to a warm, dusky gold, the scent of earth and blooms filling the air. I allowed myself to feel the magnitude of what I had achieved. The house wasn't just a home anymore. It was a testament to my resilience, my courage, and my right to be seen. Mark and Sophia remain a part of my life, but the dynamic has shifted. I'm no longer shrinking to fit their narrative or disappearing to accommodate their comfort. I am Elena Harper, fully present, fully visible, fully empowered. I have learned to place myself first, create boundaries, and embrace my own happiness. So, to everyone listening from wherever you are, New York, Berlin, London, or a quiet town tucked away in the mountains, I wish you a Merry Christmas. May it be filled with warmth, courage, and the determination to claim your own space and voice. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more stories from women sharing their journeys of strength and self-discovery. Because sometimes the greatest gift isn't under the tree, it's reclaiming your life and stepping into the light you deserve.